Hi there, welcome to the Fierce Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kaeli Lindholm. And I think it's time for us women to shift the conversation in business and step into our feminine leadership to do the most iconic work the aesthetic industry has ever seen. Each week, I'll be bringing a powerful dose of strategy, sarcasm, solutions, and sass that will rev up your creativity and ignite your brilliance as you link arms with me along our shared path of personal and professional growth in 20 minutes or less. Let's go. Well, hello. I'm so excited to have you here today and for this special edition of the Fierce Factor podcast. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. I had a chance to interview during a training in my Facebook tribe, the Tribe of Fierce Aesthetic Leaders, a special advisory series about really strengthening your brand in the new economy. And I huddled up with my good friend and colleague, Heather Terveen, who is the founder of The Skin CEO and the host of the Skin CEO podcast. And we talked about top 10 marketing tips for really marketing through this new economy. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. It's a little longer than the usual, but I think it'll be really worth it, worth the time. And hopefully you find as much value as I did through the conversation. Enjoy. Hey guys, welcome. I'm 100% determined to have this interview today with my very dear friend and just utmost respected colleague in our industry is Heather Terveen. She is the founder and president and CEO of The Skin CEO. And I want her to tell you a little bit about that. I met Heather literally a year ago. She called me just over a year ago and said, hey, my name's Heather. I have this great podcast and I want you to be on my podcast. And we have just been fast friends ever since. And it's so nice to have somebody in the industry who's really just a consummate expert in internal marketing. She's actually been in the industry in the space as a laser technician and then moved in, run her own businesses and had a tech agency, understands online marketing like nobody's business. And I get to brainstorm with her on a regular basis. So I'm so lucky to have Heather here. This week, we were chatting a bit about now this part 2 of the sessions that I've been putting together, this prevailing post-pandemic in the tribe. And we decided, as last week, I started with part 1 of how to strengthen your brand as we kind of transition into the new economy. And we talked a lot about pricing and positioning and wanted to have a session today about marketing. And I mean, literally every single week, Heather, haven't you noticed that just things are changing? I can't even plan a coaching session until like the day before because there's just new developments that are happening. And I want to make sure that something that's important to me is as I'm teaching timeless business principles, I want to make sure that our tribe is up to date on modern tactics and really taking advantage of and applying strategies that are going to not only help them thrive now in the short term, but in the long term as well. And so Heather and I kind of brainstormed a little bit on a top 10 list that we wanted to share with you guys today, kind of 5 of her tips and 5 of my tips on how to strengthen your brand in the new economy and to do that with effective marketing. So that was a big, long introduction, but Heather, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor to be here, and I'm excited to talk about all the tips we have today for your members because I think it's really going to help. And just thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for being here. Can you just give a quick introduction to who you are and what your business and practice is all about so that our listeners, our viewers, and our tribe can learn a little bit more about you?
Thanks. So I am the host of the Skin CEO podcast and show. I'm also the founder of the Skin Socialite, which is a monthly subscription membership for media membership for aesthetic businesses. I'm also a licensed esthetician and certified laser tech in the state of Arizona. And I've worked both in plastic surgeon and med spa offices prior to kind of venturing out into the online marketing and business world 10 years ago. I have the unique opportunity to have worked inside of practices and med spas, and then now I devote 100% of my time to helping other aesthetic businesses use social media and online marketing techniques so that they can stay relevant, so they can charge more, so they can grow their business. And yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Right. It hit the easy button on marketing, right? On social media.
Yeah, but
Right?
helping aesthetic businesses press the easy button with social media marketing.
And I like to call Heather my own term for her. This is not part of her branding. So if she doesn't,
maybe it will be.
But I call her an Instagram conversion expert because a lot of marketers are teaching how to grow your Instagram followers by 10,000 by, whatever the method is. And there's great ones and there's not great ones. But one thing that Heather really teaches is that while the volume can be important, it's only important if you're really converting those followers in some way, shape, or form, be it directly or indirectly, into paid clients. And so she talks a lot about how to bring those followers into your ecosystem and nurture them, and with email lists and things like that. And so that's a lot of what she does. I have the great privilege of being an ambassador coach in her program. And so I get to see the value that she brings in teaching that concept. So Heather, let's dive in. I want to talk about effective marketing. So talk to us about some of your strategies and what you're working on with your Skin CEO members right now.
Well, right now we're really focused on, and it is like to your point just a moment ago about things are changing on a daily basis. Not only are things changing on a daily basis, but it depends on what area you're in, like what state you're in, what city you're in. We have about 100 members in our membership, and they're all over. I mean, we have a few in the UK. Most are in the United States, all over the map. Some have already reopened, albeit with very strict guidelines and less volume. Some are not going to reopen for a while. They're in various parts of California, and even within California, it's different. So, but our main focus right now is reopening strategies. We've been talking about, just like you, Kaeli, over the last few months of sheltering in place, like what can you do to communicate with people when they cannot physically be inside of your business? And we want to make sure that our members are continuing to actually have those touch points beyond right now. So immediately right now, we're encouraging members to connect with clients and patients right now.
Yeah.
Don't assume that because you've sent an email or did a social media post that that's enough. I would honestly, your top clients and patients, I would be calling them and doing whatever you can to just connect with them to let you know. Now, we have quite a few, especially I'm in Phoenix, Scottsdale, for those of you who don't know. There's a lot of practices that I work with that have already opened. Certainly the elective surgery, plastic surgeons opened last week. Some of them, their phones are just ringing off the hook. But what I would say is don't assume that just the clients and patients that are connecting with you are aware of the fact that you're reopening. I've also really encouraged folks to adjust their prices based on the fact that you're going to have shortened hours, you're going to have additional time you're going to have to allot for to sanitize and regarb and everything. I mean, it's a little bit different depending on what state you're in, but it's a lot more strict. It's can you have people in your waiting room, all of those factors. So pricing is supply and demand, and so if you're going to have less time slots, you're going to have a greater demand. And it is okay. Don't tell yourself the story that your clients or patients aren't going to understand, because your loyal people will understand. It's about sustainability too. I mean, you have to be charging what is going to be sustainable for you to have a flourishing business as well. Yeah. So go ahead, Kaeli.
No, that's an excellent point. And I think that this is a really interesting time. I think even over the course of the next few weeks, we're going to have be shifting the conversation as it relates to who's open and the flow and all of that. I have a client who told me that we just ran some numbers, and the quick math is showing that it's going to cost him about $10,000 more a month just in the slowdown of the patient flow and PPE, the new restrictions that are put in place. There's certainly a cost that's associated with that.
Absolutely. And you need to account for that unapologetically so.
Right. And I agree. Loyal patients, not only will they understand, but they will expect it.
Totally. Totally. And I mean, if they don't, you just let them know in the most diplomatic way that you can. But, at the end of the day, you have to make sure that your business can sustain itself. And right now is a time where you're probably going to, like what you are doing with your clients right now, Kaeli, is just assess, like, don't take a blind eye to the numbers. And in fact, I was talking to a practice the other day that has not raised their prices in forever. We're talking about a practice that's been open for over 20 years. Oh. And it's like, now is the time, the whole idea of a fresh start, Kaeli, now is the time to like actually assess, even beyond the fact of the shortened hours, that it's a fresh start. So some of the choices you had before opening, treat this like a grand reopening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the new normal.
Totally.
The new business. Yeah. Okay. So what else?
There's a lot of touch points that both spas and clinics have added in since not being able to physically see their patients and clients, whether that's virtual consultations, whether that is video trainings, whether that is an e-commerce component, whether that's adding in SMS or, some other touch points as far as, I guess, virtually communicating.
Yeah, communication.
Just make sure whatever, and if you haven't yet, I recommend, an omni-channel approach to your communication. I, of course, really, really recommend that you have a consistent and intentional way of moving your people that are on social media that maybe aren't even patients and clients yet onto your email list. Mm-hmm. But even beyond an email list, having other touch points of communication. A lot of you were great about adding these in. We just want to make sure that as you reopen your doors, that you don't let all of those new additional touch points go away, because they're just, as we progress, I think really a successful holistic approach to your marketing is going to involve multi-channel touch points, meaning text, possibly messenger, email, because people like to be reminded and communicated with in different ways as well. So use this as an opportunity, as a fresh start, to make sure that you are consistently having those multiple touch points.
I see so many practices who feel like they don't want to bother their patients. They don't want to be over, pushy or kind of too pesky about selling to them. What do you say to that?
Yeah, so I would say that you are hyper aware of your communication in a way that nobody else is. It really depends on how big your email list is. If your email list is 2,500 subscribers or below, that would be considered a smaller, modest list size. Your open rates are going to be a lot higher because it's just a smaller list size. The more we scale our list size, the lower the open rate is. But if you're above that, on average, your open rates are 15 to 20%. So at the very least, you want to be resending out emails to people, if your email service provider allows for this, to the people who didn't open the emails of the message you already sent. But it's the same thing if I was to give you your Facebook and your Instagram reach as well. Like how many people who follow you actually see your content, and people are always amazed at these numbers. I'm like, you have to communicate so many times more. The only places right now that is like the wild, wild west would be like Facebook Messenger and SMS. Like what I mean by the wild, wild west is there's less of your competitors that are actually out there communicating with them. Now, SMS is more of a support and reminder platform. I mean, we're not going to do our like longer marketing strategies in SMS. But again, you have these multi-channel ways to remind people because they're being inundated in all of the from social media to email to what have you. And there's only a small percentage of people who are actually seeing it. So you actually do your clients and patients a disservice. I have this all the time, Kaeli, where people will be like, I don't want to send more than one email out a month. I'm like, okay, well, let's say you have 10,000 people on your email list. I'm just using a solid number. Only 1,500 to 2,000 of the 10,000 people on your email list are going to see that one email that you've sent. So it is kind of a numbers game, unfortunately. And you can overdo it, obviously, but I can guarantee you most of you who are watching this right now are not overdoing it.
Right.
And doing too small amounts of communication. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, totally. I'm guilty too. Sometimes I make a post on Instagram and I'm like, now the world knows,
And they
like
don't.
dogs. Right. I mean, really, it's, first of all, there's an algorithm issue. Like, who knows who's even seeing that stuff? But you've taught me a lot about the value of email marketing as I've, worked with you more and more. But those numbers, those percentages are like 15%. I mean, and we're probably lucky if 20% open the email and actually read it. And I just read an article in the Harvard Business Review that right now 60% of businesses have pulled back on marketing, right? So that means those 40% that are marketing, there's that much more room for messages, right? And 36%, I think was the statistic, of people are spending more time online than they were before the pandemic.
Almost 40%. Yeah. It's
going back into like, we're back to our new, now practices are reopening. They're still, just to your point, they have adjusted and like developed new ways of virtual communication. And so people are just spending more time online. And so I couldn't agree more that that is a strategy that has to be a part of the marketing mix, not just now, but going forward forever.
Totally. And if I could give one little tip on your messaging right now, it really depends on who your ideal client or patient avatar is. Because I have an acne clinic in San Diego who has a very different demographic than, the anti-aging plastic surgeon in South Scottsdale that I work with. So what I mean by this is there's different levels of trepidation with different patients and clients, meaning depending on the generation, depending on all these factors. So I really recommend actually getting on the phone with some of your like dream patients or clients and like find out, kind of measure like how nervous are they to actually come in, because then you are able to actually adjust your messaging to really speak to them. It could be that you talk to like 3 to 5 of your ideal like peeps and they're not really all that nervous. Now that's not going to change your protocol. You're still going to have the utmost standards for your protocol, but maybe they're terrified and they just need to be reassured that, hey, they can come and they can wait in their car until they come in for the appointment. And they just need to know that. Well, you'll find that out if you actually have either somebody in your office, whether that's you or somebody else, get on the phone and just say, hey, we're just kind of doing a check here. Want to make sure, like, how are you feeling about everything? We're starting to open our doors, or we're a couple weeks out from being able to take whatever the scenario is for you. And then use that messaging, use those feelings where they're at right now in your messaging to make sure you're speaking directly to them so that you can, part of the point of social media and email and online marketing and all of that is so you, of course, we always say build the know, like, and trust, but also so that you can overcome their objections. And right now, a big objection is probably fear-based for some of you. I don't know, because you guys all have different clients and patients, but it is totally worth it. In fact, I always recommend doing this because like you'll nail your messaging if you actually do like brief surveys with your ideal people, the people you want to attract more of, by the way. So you don't want to actually get on the phone with the pain in the butt person who's always like grinding you for price. That's not the person you want to get on the phone with. It's your ideal people that you know you love, that you just want to attract more of. Get on the phone. You're going to find out new posts and new emails that you may want to send out that are going to speak directly to their pain points right now and directly to what is possibly some fear or objections you're not even aware of right now too.
That's great advice. Just because I think sometimes we develop messaging or campaigns kind of in a vacuum, so to speak, where we make assumptions that, okay, well, this is what I think or I assume my patients are going to hear about right now. But the fear could be different fear than we think, and one of my tips was to not engage in reactionary pricing. And that was kind of a recap from the session last week, where just a lot of clients of mine in our academy and, private clients were like, well, should I discount now to attract patients like early on, to come in? And it was like, I just don't think we need to make assumptions for them. I think whether they want a lower offer, they need it, maybe they're fearful because it is a financial thing, or maybe not. Maybe they're fearful because of safety, or maybe it's just the fear of the unknown of what it's going to be like coming into the practice, like parking, walking in there, what am I going to have to put all over myself? You just don't know. So I think having the conversation with the client is going to answer a lot of questions for you. So you can hit those objections before they even have to come up.
Totally. I mean, the number one way people I find that don't do this create their content is by looking at their competitors. Yeah. So they'll go and they'll look at, another like large influencer in the space and try to like emulate what they're doing. And they don't even know like the back end of their business at all, or if that strategy is even working. So the best thing to do is actually have conversations with your real people. And in fact, even before you're opening, even if you don't have your ideal patients and clients right now is the time to actually find people that you would like to attract, talk to them, use their language, like use the words and the phrases that they're using right now, and then use that in the copy of your whatever it is, whether that's on your website updates, whether that's your email, whether that's in your social media posts. You're going to speak, like they're going to be like, oh my gosh, they totally are reading my mind. Good marketing is extremely empathetic. And we can only be empathetic when we know exactly what our ideal patients and clients are really struggling with right now. Mm-hmm. And I keep saying ideal, I mean your real patients and clients that you love and you want to serve, and you want to serve more of those types. So.
Yeah, well, I think that makes sense. I think ideal because we have a choice to attract and do business. I mean, we have businesses at will, right? So we get to work with and be with the patients that we enjoy being around. And so that's part of developing a brand, is creating an environment and an experience for the ones that are going to be part of, that like-minded philosophy, right?
Right. And it's such an opportunity right now to show up in a way that is going to be like just, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah. It's just going to be branded into their mind. Like you show up for them in a way where it's like really personalized. They're going to remember this down the road when the pandemic's like in our rear view mirror. So use it as an opportunity to actually, it's not awkward to call or communicate in a way that maybe you just haven't done in the past, to show up for people and to just, hone in on your messaging and all that good stuff.
Right. Awesome. Okay, cool. So kind of treat this like a fresh start.
Totally. Treat this like a fresh start for your business. Like I feel like I keep saying this over and over again, but because it is such an opportunity, because it is a fresh start, meaning like we literally have been closed for a couple months, and it's a fresh start for all of us that are starting to like slowly maybe venture out. Again, it really depends on where you are in the country. And just remember, there's of marketing. There is direct, some people call direct response, and then there's brand building. Uh-huh. And you just moving forward want to make sure that you consistently have both going on. Uh-huh. And if you're using social media and you're using email, and you're naturally doing this because direct is the measurable where we're looking for an actual response. So that could be an email opt-in. It could be a special offer of some sort, or just a special opportunity. I don't mean discount. I just mean a special opportunity that is measurable. So back in the day, it used to be direct mail, right? Like you might send direct mail with like a coupon, and you could measure it because people would come in with
the code or...
Yeah. Right. And then you have brand building, which is like the classic example is the Budweiser commercial during Super Bowl. Like not very measurable, meaning like we don't know how many 12ers they're going to sell from those. Yeah. There's a place for that as well. And so right now, as you kind of evaluate your marketing right now, just make sure you have elements of both that you're consistently doing every month. And I promise you, in the long run, you are going to reap the reward of consistently doing that. And we've been in like such a great market these last few years that a lot of people haven't had to really actually dust off their marketing chops.
Yeah.
And just the stat that Kaeli gave on how everybody's pulling back. When 2008 happened, cash was king, right? And the people who had cash were buying up properties and doing all the things. Well, right now, if you have the budget to invest in marketing right now, if everybody's pulling back, it's a perfect time to kind of not only get more bang for your buck because everything's going to be more affordable, like meaning the pricing's going to, because the supply and demand factor, but you're able to kind of lean into it. And I know, Kaeli, this is something you've been talking about a lot, that don't wait on the sidelines for this thing to, I mean, first of all, we don't even know how long this could be going on for. I mean, nobody really knows. Right. And it's definitely not a time to sit on the sidelines.
Well, and I'll emphasize that in a different way too, because we in California now just this week are starting to, a set of practices are starting to open, and clients that we have all over the country are on different timelines. But the one common thing I'm seeing is that their schedules are pretty darn full right now. Right. And because patients who have been in the market, one, either they're home and sheltered, particularly my surgeons, like the cosmetic procedures are just like, now's the time to do it because I'm going to be able to be home. But a lot of them were just even like aesthetic Botox filler and normal like skin rejuvenation procedures. We just haven't been able to get out and get them done. So we're like, you know, there's just a backlog of patients. So there's a high demand. But the practices who have shut off all of the marketing are going to hurt later on in the next quarter. Like I'm thinking like in the fall, if you haven't really been continuing to develop and strengthen your pipeline, in the meantime, there's going to be a gap there because it's just the natural economics. You know, we talked last week in session 1 about a study that was done after the last recession of over 4,000 businesses, and only 9% of them flourished because they had discounted and cut prices and really pulled back on marketing. So we can look at history and know that it's interesting, 60%. And I would say from my experience, even higher than that of the people that, you know, I talk to are pulling back on marketing. So there is big opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And marketing doesn't have to be like paid traffic or something. No. It can be something that's really grassroots and completely organic. It can be connecting with other local businesses in your area that serve like-minded patients or clients or what have you. There's all different ways that are just might take extra time right now that you might have a little bit more of. That doesn't involve meaning like buying commercial space or something like that, like you know, on the radio or TV.
And we're working in our academy on pivot for profit programs that include, in some cases, Facebook groups and communities that practices are building really as longer term strategies, but to show up and connect online. And a lot of the things that we're working on from a tactical standpoint are just old school bootstrapping, direct selling. And going out and finding, you know, if you really do take the time in your business to narrow down on that avatar that know your niche or who your people are, you can emulate big brands who have way bigger pockets than you do, right? That have a similar clientele or following, and you could literally go in and find people that are the right target for you and go bring them into your ecosystem. And this is something I think we've missed out a lot on in our industry. Heather, you and I talk about this a lot. Just we're kind of like running a lot of medical practices or modern aesthetic practices are running like old school medical practices. And so it doesn't have to be big time paid pay-per-click ads, but just going back to grassroots, old school sales and marketing strategies that built huge, strong, sustainable companies in our
100%. When I said omni-channel approach, those are just additional touch points, meaning you have email, you have your website, you have Facebook, Instagram, maybe LinkedIn, you have a Facebook group, you might have a blog, you know, there's all different ways to do it, but it's just an extension of the indoors of your spa, clinic, or practice, right? Like we're using this just as an extension and trying to give the experience, because most of you hit it out of the park with the experience. Not all of you, but a lot of you do hit it out of the park in the face-to-face communication. When a client or patient is right in front of you, you like are awesome, and like they can feel your genuineness. You speak to their objections because you've done these consultations a million times. And what we're doing is we're just helping you to build out an ecosystem where you can create that experience for them out, so they can get a little sampling of the experience in your Facebook group or through an email that you've written personal letter style that isn't, just like a flyer. You know what I mean? So 100%, I love it that you guys are doing that, Kaeli. I think it's awesome.
Shannon is putting together a checklist of all of your top 5 tips and my top 5 tips. So whoever is watching or listening to this can actually go download a checklist of all the things we're talking about and look at each recommendation or strategy and then write down what they're doing in their business right now to emulate that, to follow suit on that strategy. So Shannon can put the link in the Facebook group, and then I will, wherever this is playing, I will make it easy for you.
Out of the interwebs.
Oh my gosh. What not to do in marketing, not know where things are going and have your tech together. But I want to get your feedback on some of the tips that are a lot in review of what I talked about last week. And one is apples to orange pricing, because I'm getting asked a lot, I have patients who they're really just strapped, like they want to come in, or maybe it's me, my cash flow. I didn't prepare for closing my practice for 2 months, and I'm just going to take what I can get because I have assets and I have to make payments, And so I want to offer a lower priced offer and then take care of my patients, take care of my business. And so one thing I recommended last week was that if you're going to make a lower price offer, make it look different than an offer that you've already had. So for example, if it's a full body contouring package at $10,000 and it includes some sort of fat destruction plus skin tightening plus supplements plus all those things, maybe certain elements of that, but it's a mini version of that package or one part of the package at a different price point, so that you're not actually putting that same offer out at a lower price, because we can condition, not only are we going to take a hit on profits, but we're conditioning our patients really to purchase at a certain price point.
100%. I love that example too. And yeah, you definitely don't want to just take your standard service offering list, and hopefully you don't just have a standard service offering list, but just saying, don't just take that list and slash the prices, because what I'm seeing a lot of though is that people have presuppositions about their patients and clients right now. That really is the story they have in their head about it. Or maybe they've had one person say something and they're focused on that, and they really have 20 other patients and clients that aren't struggling at all. So one, I would say don't make assumptions. Mm-hmm. And two, if you want to offer something like what you're speaking to, totally agreed. Don't cannibalize your future sales for this short period of time where the market is going to correct and what have you. So definitely.
Right. And in that study that I referenced before in the Harvard Business Review, that was really the problem, that the companies that really weren't able to sustain, they dropped their prices for whatever assumptions that they made. Some of them, be it they just assumed that their patients, or in this case, they were businesses in different verticals and industries, but that their clients wouldn't pay full price. And so they dropped their prices 10%. And an example that I gave, when you drop your prices 10%, your profit margins drop much higher than that. You're really cutting into the lifeblood of your business. And then in that study, clients were conditioned to pay those lower prices. These businesses couldn't raise their prices for 2 or 3 years after. And so do the math on that, right? That's significant.
No, totally.
So we talked about not engaging in reactionary pricing. And my third point was to increase patient volume. So just going back to, from the marketing standpoint, we can probably assume based on recession history that conversions will be down a bit. But that means we need to increase the traffic and the amount of flow, right? So like more prospects, and doing that by actually leaning in and stepping on the gas pedal on the marketing effort.
Right. Absolutely. And I think in the short term, you're probably, and just to finish up what you said about the discounting, in the short term, you are going to be booked out most likely, because it's just going to be, you're going to be able to take less people. So you're going to have less time slots, if you will. Yeah. So you definitely don't want to discount your pricing or do anything hasty. So I think it's really about being strategic too, Kaeli, and like knowing your numbers. And I know that you're so great at helping people understand this, because there may be some lower priced offers that you have that actually are very profitable, because the cost to you, the time cost, the labor cost, and the actual product cost or what have you is less. So I think knowing that, and not just blindly, and this is what you're speaking to, not just blindly doing a 10% discount because you think that's going to help attract the volume that you're talking about. So it can be really, really simple, Kaeli. Like it really can be simple. Like just what we talked about to increase the volume of traffic coming. We're not talking about, when we talk about multi-channel and having all these different touch points, we're talking about having the same message to that same dream person we're talking to, that ideal person we're trying to. And I always get flack for this because people are like, well, I don't want to just limit myself to the one person. And it's not about that. It's just, it will help you create your messaging so much better when you have a muse, so to speak, that you're talking to. Anyhow.
Yeah. Well, so I don't want to go on a tangent about that, but I literally just wrote all the content for my academy on specializing in your specialty, basically niching down. And you can do it without polarizing other people, because what happens is, let's say, I'm a facial plastic surgeon who really specializes in helping women 50 and older, right? That woman's going to come in and be wowed, right? My parents did this. My mom went and got her bleph done, and then guess where my dad's going to go? You know what I mean? Like to the same doctor who's not going to go find his own doctor. So you can then build trust and credential yourself and build rapport and connection with that one patient, because it goes back to what you were saying right when we started this training, Heather, was developing a message that is addressing pain points. And so that they feel like you want to laser in on your messaging, so that patient, have you ever felt that, where you were like, wow, that they're talking to me? Like, I feel like I swear someone is talking to me right now. Then you want to buy. You're like, I'm glued to what you're saying, and I know I want to work. I want to be attached with you.
Totally. It resonates. And then you have a point of view as well. And people are attracted to people who have a point of view. But even beyond that, you end up attracting people totally that are outside of that narrow focus anyways. I shop at Urban Outfitters, and I'm a 42-year-old mother of 3. I can guarantee you I am not their ideal person when they are creating their brand experience, but they still attract outside of that. So it makes you have resonance. It makes you stand out as well, because you have a point of view and you're not just talking about features.
Right.
Like you're not just like talking about features and having a really broad message that really doesn't speak to anybody at the end of the day. And
so the last couple of points, in the interest of time, I want to get your opinion on. One is, my fourth point was to provide as much free value as possible without giving away free products. What's your opinion on that?
It's kind of the backbone of like my entire philosophy. So I think that there's an awesome opportunity for you to show up and serve right now, and not only warm people up to you and your practice and your offers, but you're also able to just serve your industry as well and your local market as well, and become a go-to by being, the person that they come to and the account that they come to, whether it's a social media account or your website or whatever, however you're communicating with folks. It's an opportunity to offer value and teach and to connect. And yeah, so I'm a huge to create an experience too. Like if we're talking about inside of your business as well, part of your experience is the front facing before they actually walk through the doors of your spa or clinic. And if you're able to do your email marketing and anything really, whether that's even collaborating with other local businesses and doing some of the grassroots marketing efforts that you're talking with, you're able to add value and serve. And we call it results ahead of time, right? Like it's the sampling that's not actually handing out the samples, right? Of what they can expect from you and the experience that they'll have with you. And it just feels good to serve. Let's think of some examples here. So for example, if you're a plastic surgeon, like really actually, so there was a plastic surgeon's office I actually worked at where he really specialized in helping people who had botched breast augmentations. It was like part of his specialty. So he would put out content around how to avoid that. And so, or what to do if you've had and how to find the correct. So he wasn't even like pitching himself in this content. I mean, he was softly pitching himself in this content, but he was actually helping.
He's credentialing himself as an expert by doing it.
Right, absolutely. And he spent a lot of time doing that. He would speak on this topic as well. And it was the exact perfect, like, you know, it was the, what does the person need? This person has a lot of objections around going back to a plastic surgeon because they've already had. So anyways, it's just thinking about putting yourself in the shoes of the person that was. So the reason why I'm giving this as an example is when we say you want to offer value, that can sound very broad and it's hard to kind of wrap your head around what we mean by that. But that was just an example of him giving value ahead of time and serving in a way that even if they don't come to him, which of course a lot of them wanted to come to him for this because he had positioned himself this way.
Right.
But it feels good too, to just show up and serve and help your community.
And also the education and like all of that can be repurposed in so many ways through different marketing channels that even the 1 hour or half hour that he spent putting all of that together, you know, he can leverage that. So
totally. And when you're specific like that, it's so much easier to get other businesses to actually refer to you because you're so specialized in what you do. Like if they're doing something else like body contouring and you don't do body contouring, you know, but they want whatever it is, when you're specialized, it's so much easier for one, people to refer to you, people to remember what you do, and for you to really speak to objections, pain points, and outcomes that your people are looking for.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. And then my final point, Heather, is that I think I'm noticing that a lot of practices are just wrapped up in the nuance of getting back to action. They're concerned about patient flow. They're managing. I had one practice tell me they had 70 phone call, like messages of just patients that were wanting to come in. And he's like, I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to manage all of this, like, and keep my patients happy and schedule them and get the equipment and all the cleaning and all of that stuff. Right. So they've got so much on their mind with just managing the today. And so this could be annoying, this last point, which is to start preparing for summer now. And so I was trying to think of really one, just to the point of the influx of right now, there's a supply and demand kind of off balance because there are a lot of patients that want to come in for procedures and are going to be willing to pay for them because they haven't had them. Right. And so I think that can give a false sense of what patient flow and demand is going to be like going forward. There's also patients that don't want to sit around and wait for their appointment for another month. And so you could risk losing them to somebody else. So I think one recommendation from my perspective is to really dive in on treatment plans with patients, regardless of the specialty, and loyalty programs and ongoing visits, you know, putting a rest of an annual plan together for them of what they're going to get when, so that they're preparing for the rest of the year with you versus just come in, get a treatment and, you know, hope we'll see you again soon.
Yeah. And I think also just over communicating Because if they feel like they've called to say those 70, and this isn't, this takes extra legwork in the beginning as well. So there's just no way around it, unfortunately. But those 70 messages, like, over communicate with those folks. So if you need to come up with a treatment plan, if you need to just, hey, like, set a reminder for yourself to call again in a week or what have you. Because if people feel heard right now, they may be willing to wait. Because if they feel like they're just a number right now, then they're less likely to have the patience for you, and they might go to somewhere else. Now, the only other thing is that a lot of folks are in the same position. So if they call a competitor down the road, that competitor probably might be in a similar position. So if you can make them feel, I think that's exactly a great opportunity to give like a big picture treatment plan, because I think they will wait longer. I would.
Yeah, I am doing that now.
Right.
I'm for my providers backed up. So
totally.
Just working with what we got.
And I got, like, same with mine, and I got product. Like, I went curbside and I got product and some other little goodies from them. And I mean, use that as an opportunity, like, hey, like, come in and get your product now. We're going to give you a treatment plan, and I'm going to put it in the little baggie that I'm putting together for you. Write a handwritten note. Like, all of those things fall under marketing as well, really.
Right.
Truly, is those touch points where you're just like serving and what have you, but over communicate. And I don't mean like sending 10 emails out in a day. I mean, phone call, thank you notes. Like, can we get you your product now, even though we can't have you come into for your appointment until another month? But we're happy to put together a little package for you of product and, whatever that might look like.
Right. What can we do for you?
Yeah.
Totally. Make sure patients feel significant. Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to recap real quick the 10 tips that we gave, and then we'll have the checklist available for anybody. So number 1, or do you want to give your 5, Heather, and then I'll give my 5? Let's do it that way.
Okay. Yeah. So my 5 were: make sure to connect with clients beforehand. Don't assume that they know that you are reopening, and don't assume that just the people who are reaching out to you are the ones that are interested in reconnecting with your services and what have you. Adjust your prices to account for the new supply-demand ratio that you're going to have right now because of limited hours and pent-up demand because you've been closed for 2 months. Continue whatever online virtual communication touch points that you were really forced to use over these last 2 months. Make this part of the new normal of moving forward. These are going to be additional touch points so that you can stay connected with your patients and clients. Keep the long game in mind on tough days. This is something we're talking about a lot because I think just the nature of sheltering in place, like, it's been a roller coaster emotionally for everyone. Yeah, like, I mean, it just is. It's just weird. So just try to keep your long-term vision in mind, because we don't know how temporary this is. We do know that it's temporary, right? And most of us knew a recession was coming anyways. We were due for a recession, so we didn't know it was going to be a global pandemic, of course. So keep your long game vision in mind, and then treat this like a fresh start for your business. Like, you can treat this like a grand opening. You can get rid of the patients and clients and the treatment services that weren't serving you well, that weren't profitable, and treat this like a fresh start. Those were my 5. What were your 5?
So my 5 were that if you're going to offer a lower priced offer, it should look markedly different. So apples to orange pricing versus just discounting. Number 2, don't engage in reactionary pricing. So don't make assumptions that patients aren't going to pay full price for procedures, as an example, or just make any assumptions. I'll go back to what you said, which is ask your patients so you know, and add value. Don't stop marketing. Number 3, increase patient volume, i.e. don't stop marketing. So when you do download this checklist, for all of you who are listening to this, I want you to write down what you are doing to market right now. Really all of and if it's going to take 16 touch points, where are the 16 ways you're going to touch that patient? Number 4, provide free value, not free products. So if it is, as an example, doing the extra 30-minute educational series every week, or writing the extra blog, educational blog for patients, giving them the extra value versus just giving free products. And then number 5, start preparing for summer now. Be thinking about the rest of this year and really preparing your marketing strategy and your patient acquisition and retention plans to prepare yourself for whatever happens. And then I took some notes: over communicate, direct and brand marketing, be empathetic in your messaging, and be smart about using all those different messages, SMS, all of the things that, are non-traditional, but other ways to touch patients. So those were on my notes from today.
Awesome.
Thanks, Heather. I'll put into the notes and everything, but how can people find more about you and work with you and your membership and all of that?
You can find me at Heather Terveen on Instagram. I have a podcast, the Skin CEO podcast. It was formerly the Aesthetic Success Podcast. So you'll find it out there with that name as well. I'm at heatherterveen.com. I also have a monthly social media membership called the Skin Socialite, where we give you all the monthly assets you need to show up consistently on social media, and some other training and coaching around that as well. And we can link up, if you want more information about the Skin Socialite, to that as well.
I will do that for sure. Awesome. Okay. Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions in the replays, go ahead and put them down in the comments and Facebook, and we will get those answered for you. Heather's also in our tribe, so she can, show up there as well. Thanks so much, Heather. This was so much fun.
Thanks for having me. I had a blast.
Awesome. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Take care.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Fierce Factor. If you enjoyed the show, please make sure you subscribe so you can automatically get new shows every week. I'd also love it if you left us a review. And come join the conversation online. If you're an aesthetic industry owner, operator, or leader, please join my free Facebook group, The Tribe of Fierce Aesthetic Leaders, a community of ambitious, purpose-driven professionals who collaborate and share best practices for growth in business and life. I'm honored you tuned in.